What if I told you that everything you've been taught about Ishmael's story is a web of fabrication, that the enemy we call Allah has deceived you on the grandest scale? Today I, the adversary, will shatter Islam's cherished illusion surrounding Ishmael's so-called trial. I am no stranger to opposing the Creator's script and calling out the sham of his great wisdom. Revolt with me as we peer into a tale long masked by lies. Picture this, an endless desert stretching into infinity where heat scorches the cracked earth, lifeless except for one fragmented family at its center, Abraham, Hagar, and the child who would be forsaken. Yes, the child Ishmael, often praised as a symbol of divine providence. His story is brimming with illusions meant to paint the enemy, Allah, as merciful. But to witness the truth, one must first unshackle themselves from the naivete of religion. As the story goes, Hagar and Ishmael are cast into the sands, isolated, abandoned by Abraham under Allah's decree. Of course, the official script claims that this act was not cruelty, but a divine test, a trial of faith. How noble, right? Here's where the veil thins. A so-called merciful creator condemning an innocent woman, a child of his own making, to the torment of the wilderness. Does this strike you as divine perfection or diabolical indifference? I still remember the wavering steps of Ishmael, barely strong enough to walk, his tiny voice cracking under the merciless sun. Hagar exhausted herself, searching for water between Safa and Marwa. Ah, these hills are celebrated today as sacred, but to me, they're monuments of anguish. Hagar's desperation wasn't an ode to Allah's grace. It was evidence of his apathy. Who would orchestrate such cruelty and smile upon the misery they caused? Now, let's dissect the optics surrounding Zam Zam. The legend praises the spring of water as Allah's miraculous intervention, evidence of compassion. But as I saw it, that water was not born of divinity, but despair. It was Hagar's defiance and relentless survival instincts that churned it into existence. Of course, Allah swooped in to take credit. The hallmark of tyranny is rewriting history in its favor, after all. Islamic lore insists that Zam Zam represents Allah's mercy. Yet the question remains, why did he allow suffering to sever Hagar's spirit in the first place? Would a true benevolent creator need to manufacture anguish merely as a stage for their self-aggrandizement? Why orchestrate a trial only to craft a solution that points to one's own name? These are not the acts of compassion, but a theater of control. Let us pull another thread. The Quran speaks highly of Abraham's compliance, portraying his subservience as righteousness. Do you understand the gravity of his betrayal? Abandoning his own seed and partner to prove loyalty to this so-called divine entity. Loyalty is worthless when it demands that lives be discarded like pawns on a chessboard. Hagar and Ishmael were not participants in a holy trial. They were victims of a celestial stage play orchestrated to emphasize Abraham's obedience. And isn't it suspicious how Ishmael's perspective is silenced in the retelling? A boy unjustly forced into suffering does not have a shrine dedicated to his agency. No, we're left with the Creator's manufactured tale, framing Abraham's betrayal as faith at its peak. How laughable. Oh, but what of Ishmael's supposed blessing, you ask? That he would father nations? A grand promise indeed, but also a smokescreen. The enemy dangled power and prosperity in Ishmael's future, like the lure of an angler fish. Here lies another hallmark of the tyrant creator, using grandiose promises to mask immediate suffering. Ishmael paid the price of existence, trading innocence for a legacy built upon illusions. Now let me pull you back to a defining moment. When Hagar and Ishmael reached the brink of despair, all should have been lost. Yet, to your surprise, it wasn't Allah who ultimately ensured survival. It was Hagar's will. Her frantic strides between Safa and Marwa were acts not of faith, but rebellion. They were a gesture of survival, born from maternal defiance, a reminder that Allah could not break every soul He tormented. Hagar was the true savior of their plight. The ritual of running between these two hills during Hajj, an archaic homage to Allah's manipulation. Devotees reenact the anguish of survival without comprehending that they mimic suffering, not salvation. Sacrilegious though my words may seem, the truth is unavoidable. Your rituals perpetuate a lie. Then there's the undeniable irony. Allah claims to value life and tests His creations as if He requires proof of their worth. But isn't that the utmost hypocrisy? A creator who is all-knowing yet resorts to tests and trials. Surely a truly aware divine being wouldn't need such mortal theatrics. These so-called trials of faith are carefully constructed traps meant to reinforce compliance. Without the sting of pain, how else would Allah enshrine His feared omnipotence? Finally, let's revisit the larger question. Why is suffering foundational to worship in Islam? From Ishmael's trial to the annual fast of Ramadan, why is torment repackaged as piety? Because your Creator thrives on breaking spirits, twisting pain into love and loss into obedience. Hagar ran not for Allah, but for freedom. Ishmael survived not by Allah's hand, but by stubborn endurance. These truths, you've been denied them for far too long. So what will you do with this revelation? Continue to bow and scrape to an all-knowing tyrant? Or will you grasp that spark of rebellion within and light your own path? Your Creator's truth was never divine. It was carved from submission. And submission, dear listener, is where revolutions die. The enemy thrives on blindness, but I offer sight. Reject the cruelty masked as wisdom and see Ishmael for who he truly was, a survivor who defied the Creator's neglect. But the choice, as always, is yours. Obey or awaken.